Alright guys, welcome back and time for us to start painting. So what I'm going to be using here is my primary colors, which is white, black, blue, yellow, and red. Um, and it's very important what kind of blue you use here. So for this particular painting, it's important to use either phthalo blue or primary blue. Just avoid using ultramarine blue or any other blue that has a purple undertone, because those will not give you a beautiful teal. And what we need to have here is we need to have a nice teal color. So make sure you have something with a greener undertone. So primary blue or phthalo blue will work best. As far as red and yellow and white and black, doesn't matter, whichever you have. And actually, if you guys have a couple different shades of brown, that would be an asset here. And you may even be able to avoid using red or yellow. If you have a few different shades of brown, if you only have one, it's still good to have red and yellow, just like a smidge. But you will be using your brown as a base, because why I have red and yellow here is to mix my browns and yellow to mix my teal, by the way. And of course, you're going to need a couple different brushes. It's good to have a variety. I have 4 brushes here. I will likely not use all 4, but it's good to have. So something medium, I grabbed 2 different medium brushes. Sorry, this is a large one. Something larger. This is not a large brush. This is about medium large, but my canvas is not that big either. So it's perfect for the size of my canvas. This is size 11 and it's square, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be square. This is just my personal preference. Then I have something medium. I have medium pointy and medium square, and again, they're both medium small. I would say they're not true medium, because again, my canvas is not that big either. And I have a small detailed brush, which is very important to have. You can't really avoid using it because there are lots of fine details on this painting, so we'll definitely need a small brush for them. And of course, a paper towel and some water. And what I want to start with here is I want to start with a background. So for my background, I'm going to start by just mixing one shade of, I would say, teal. You're going to grab your large brush for that, or a large airbrush, whatever you have. And I'm going to start with scooping some white on the side, quite a good amount, because again, I have lots of background. And to that, I'm going to start adding blue little by little, tiny touch by tiny touch. So I'll add a little bit of blue, and I'll mix it in. Now I'll add a little bit more blue, mix it in, and so on, until I arrive at the right shade, which this is, it's going to get in there. And then to this color, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow. Not a lot, because if you add too much yellow, it's going to turn into green right away. That's not the goal for us. The goal for us is just to make it, I'll give it that a little bit of green undertone to make it teal. So you're going to add just a tiny smidge of yellow. If you need a smidge more, you can always add it, just don't overdo it. And once you have something that looks approximately like that, we're going to start coloring in our background. And what are we going to do? So we're going to color in the entire thing. So just the entire background. If you want, you can also do your sides, your edges of your canvas as we go, but I usually do that later, so not a problem if you want to do that later. It's good to do it right away if you're not very good at mixing colors, and if you run out, you're not going to be able to mix the same shade again, in which case maybe do it right away. If you feel like, nah, I'll be fine, I can mix it again, then you don't have to do that right now. And make sure you don't leave any gaps between your outline of the bears and the background. You need to color right to outline, or you can even overlap your outline a little bit and go over it. That's okay too. Just make sure you don't leave gaps. Alright, so I have my background. That's my first layer. If you guys don't have it yet, take your time and generally feel free to pause this video as many times as needed. You don't have to keep up with my pace. That's the benefit of working with a video recording. You can just take your time. Now next one, I want to go slightly darker. It's going to be like a mixture of that plus a bit of blue plus a bit of black. So if you still have a bit of this color, you can mix right into it. If not, you can start a whole new one. In my case, I don't have much left, so I'm going to start a new one. I'm going to show you. I'll add a bit of white. You see I added a bit of white. And I'm going to add a bit of blue. I'll make it just a touch darker. And then to that, I'm going to add a smidge of black as well. So something like this. Let's try it. Maybe even a little bit more black. Oh yeah. Okay, and I'm only going to use a touch of this on my brush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry up my brush a little bit after taking paint on a paper towel. And now with this, I'm going to go on my background lightly. And you want to dry brush it on anywhere you want. Just make sure it's nice and light. See, it creates this beautiful, rustic texture. And make sure the color is not too dark. Or just use a tiny touch, because if you use a tiny touch right over the wet paint, it's going to blend, it's going to get lighter, so it's going to look perfect. If you use too much paint, it may look slightly blobby and slightly too dark, which is not what we want. So just keep in mind it's about the balance of color and how much of paint you use on your brush. So we're just going to add a bit of that texture. Alright, I have it on this side. Now let's go on the other side and we'll do pretty much the same thing. Alright, beautiful. You can even take a couple darker ones now. So I can take even a bit more black and add it in, and you see it's almost like a black. It's not true black, that's true black. This is still grayish blue, but it's darker. And again, I'm taking just the tiniest little smidge of this. And I want to add just a couple of those that are darker. So a little bit right here. Dry brush them on, very important. If you don't dry brush them on, they're going to be way too dark in the end. So you have to have next to no paint on your brush. Do you see? When I add it, it literally like you touch something with the dirty fingers. That's what it looks like pretty much. It just adds that smidge of darkness and that's it. So you have to have next to no paint. So make sure you dab it off on a paper towel before doing that. Just add it in a couple spots. don't have to have lots of those. So that's enough for that side. I'm gonna add a few for the side. You see, I like getting them around the edge. Again, it does give it a little bit of a rustic look. And then I want to add my last color here, which is going to be this more vibrant teal-ish green color, bluish green. So again, I'm going to start with white. I'll put some white on the side. You don't have to make a lot of it. Then to this white, I'm going to add some blue. Not a lot, even more white. Yeah, it should be nice and light. It should be a little lighter than what we had originally. That's why I'm mixing on the same spot so you guys can see the difference. So this was our first color, right? And now I'm going to add some yellow to it. This may have been a little too much yellow. So let's add more white and more blue. Oh yeah, that's a good color. That's exactly the color that I'm looking for. You see it's a little lighter and a little more teal. It has slightly more yellow. But don't overdo it again because it's going to turn into green. This you can even call mint green. That's what it's like. It's this mixture between aqua, light teal, or mint green. That's what we want. And with this we're going to add a couple of brush strokes as well. Just like anywhere you want them to be. And I'm sorry guys, I know on the image it looks much brighter here. My camera, for some reason, it doesn't pick up certain shades as vibrant as it should. In real life, this is a super vibrant color, but for some reason just doesn't translate as that. I'm not 100% sure why. It just doesn't. So we'll just add a bit of that again. Dry brush it on wherever, just like a tiny touch. I'm not trying to add too much of it. And this color is even optional. You could totally do without it because we're already at a place where our background looks really good. This is just that additional something. Alright, so I added lots of it, and I'm happy with it. I don't want to be changing anything else on my background. I'm just going to let it be. And now I'm going to wash off my medium large brush. I'll put it aside. And I'm going to grab my medium brush. And the next thing I want to do is I want to do our tree trunk and I want to do our bears. But just the base, because they're going to have more than one layer. Everything here has more than one layer, as you noticed. But I want to start with just one layer for now. So I'm going to start with my tree trunk first. And I'm going to start with the white side. So I'm going to grab my medium small square brush. This is number 6 for those who are wondering. But again, I wouldn't go by number specifically. Just medium small is good. Pointy or square doesn't matter. I prefer square. And I'm going to grab some white. And I'm just going to color this side here in white, just a little bit. I would say 1/3. And I'm going to add a pretty thick layer. Don't be afraid to get it on your bears. pretty thick layer of white too because I don't want it to dry before I'm able to blend in my black. So 1/3 is covered. Now I'm going to take more white and I'm going to bring it in lines from left to right. You see just horizontal lines at this point. Again, if you get on your bears, not a big deal, not a problem at all. Go right over them. All right. And on the other side, I'm going to grab black. So here's my black. And I'm going to start by just putting a line. And then from that line, similar to what I did in white, I'm going to add lines. And I am refilling my brush as needed. So now I'm going to start adding lines from the right to the left. And you will see it will start picking up that white. And that's a good thing. So do you see I did a couple lines? Maybe let's add a couple more here. And now I want to start blending that all. So I'm going to wash off my brush, dab it off on a paper towel, and in this middle part, I'm just going to add a couple more horizontal lines. And you see it picks up some white from one side, picks up some black from the other side. It just creates something messy but beautiful. And notice I'm not going all the way from the edge to the edge. I'm mostly covering up the middle part. I'm not really touching the very edges. You can add like a small flicks closer to the edge on both sides, but really you're not going from the edge to the edge. Alright, so I've done my top. Now I'm going to refill my brush with black again. I'm going to continue going down. And you kind of want to do this faster in a way, because if you don't, your white is going to dry and then you're not going to create, it's not going to create that beautiful blending for you. Any shades of gray. So if you notice that your white is start drying, then switch to white again and just redo what we did with white originally. Add those flicks, horizontal flicks with white first, and then wash off your brush and go on a black. In my case, my white is still somewhat wet, so I think I can just swing it. I do it fast. So again, I added some, wash off my brush, dab it off on a paper towel, and then with a clean, slightly wet brush, I go ahead and I spread them a little further. And then if you feel like there's not enough of white or black, you can just grab that particular color and add a bit more. In my case, I feel like it's good, but I want to blend a little more. So I'm just going to wash off my brush and just blend a touch more. The goal is not to have a perfect blending. We want that texture. So don't over blend it either. And then maybe I'll add a touch more black on the bottom. So I'm going to refill my brush with black. I'll just add a bit more black right here. All right, that's the first layer of my tree trunk, and I'm quite happy with it. So now I want to move on to um, first layer for my bears. And I'm only going to use black, so just straight black. The tricky part here is not to lose our lines. So there are two options of what you could do here. Option number one is you literally just leave a hairline of uncovered canvas so you can still see your line. Option number two, you use two brushes at the same time, which is what I will be doing. This is my preferred way of doing it, is I'm going to be using my small brush with white paint and my medium small with black paint. And right away, I'm going to be adding those lines in white just so I can see them a little bit. So let me show you what I mean by that. Is I'm going to take some black. So let's move on to our mama bear here. I'm going to start with an ear. So first I'm just going to color in the ear. But then right away I'm going to add a couple flicks coming from the inside out. And you might find it easier to do it with a small brush, in which case you may need to wash your brush every now and then because you're going to be switching with your small brush between white and black. But I'm going to be using the top edge of my medium brush because you can see it can give me still really fine lines. And I'm going to be flicking from the inside out just a little bit to give it more of a fluffier texture. You see, just flicks with the top edge from the inside out. I'm going to avoid the eyes, by the way. Not that you can't add them on later, you could. So if you accidentally cover your eyes too much or fully cover them, it's not a big deal. You can always add them later on. But if you want to avoid them, that's even better. Let's get closer here actually for now. Alright, and now I'm going to flick the top edge to make it fluffier too. So again, you can do it with a small brush or the edge of your square brush or the tip of your medium or square brush. So it just makes it a little fluffier, right? Creates that furry texture. That's why we do it. From the inside out. That's how you flick it. And here again, for texture right away. And that's where you can use some white. You can take just a touch of white while it's still wet on your small brush. And you can add the line that we lost, the outline. For a face, for example, you see I'm only using a tiniest little touch of paint. I'm letting it blend. Because again, I'll go over it again later with a straight white, right now, this is just for me not to lose my outlines. So as long as I can somewhat see it, that's all that I'm looking for. Don't forget to wash your brush right away after you're done using it. So I'm going to continue going down. I'll finish this mama bear first. So remember where the line is, right? Let's finish the leg first, and then we'll get rid of that line, and we'll add it in white. Again, fluff it up right away. I'm going to take a little bit of my white paint. And we'll just add it where it needs to go. You see it blends nicely, so it just looks like a little highlight, which is exactly what we need. We don't want it to look like a crazy white line out of nowhere. All right, that looks good. Now I can do the little bear here. So what I'm going to do with the little bear is I'm going to start back with my black. So I'm going to take my black and I'm going to color in the areas first that are further away from Mama Bear. Okay, and now let's add a bit of white here before it dries as well. All right, and then I'm gonna get as close as I can to Mama Bear without losing my line. And then I'll grab my white again, just a touch. You see it blends that line really nicely. And then I'm going to move on to the head. I don't know if I should still use the same brush. It's a little tricky. You might want to use a smaller brush there. And I'm going to start with the black paint again. And you see again, I left just like a tiniest little outline there. And now I'm going to take some white, washed off my brush, dabbed it off on a paper towel, and I'll take some white, and with white, I'm just going to blend merge it. I'll go around here too, just to fluff it up. All right, and now I'm going to move on to my other side right here, and I'll do something very, very similar. So just the same technique, pretty much. I'm going to start with the head, so I'm going to start with the black. And then I'm going to fluff it up a little bit. Again, fluff up the outer side where it meets the background. All right, now I'm going to take a little bit of white. And we'll add it in the areas that need to be slightly separated. So right here, right here. Belly. And I'm going to go around this section right away too, just to blend in some white there already. All right, and then I'm going to move to Mama Bear's hand and a leg. So I'm going to go back to my medium small brush and I'll take some black. And I'll fluff it towards the outside again. See, what a nice texture. And on the leg. Pretty much the same thing colored in, and fluff it towards the outside. All right, and now I'm gonna move to my white, and again, I'll add it in a couple spots right away. So my small brush, a little bit of a white paint. Let's add it here. And I want to add it just a touch around this edge of a tree. All right, guys, we have our first base layer for our bears. We don't have any brown yet, but we do have a base layer in black, which is great. The only other thing I want to add in black as a base layer is I want to add a few of those things, a bit of that grass coming from the bottom. And you're welcome to do it with any brush. I think I'm going to use my medium pointy brush for this because it gives me a variety of lines that I'm looking for. So let me show you. I take some black. You see, I can make a really fine line if I use just the tip of my brush. If I push a little harder gradually, you can get a nice thick line. So this gives me a variety of thicknesses that I can do with it, which is what I'm looking for. I want my grass to be thicker on the bottom than on top. So when I use this brush and I push harder, it gives me wider lines. And then as I slowly let go and move to using just the tip, it gives me really fine lines. So that's exactly why I'm going to be using this brush. But I would say small brush is just as good of a choice for this. Small pointy. And we're just going to add a bit of grass. And it's super abstract. Just make sure you water down your black a little bit for this, because if you don't, it's going to be very hard for you to do those nice long flowy lines, because black and any paint really, when it's thicker, has a tendency to dry up faster, and also your brush gets clogged in it, and you're not really able to make those really nice and long brush strokes. So if you're aiming to have those nice and long brush strokes, it's the best to water down your paint so it can last longer, so it can carry your line longer before you run out of paint on your brush. And that's what I always do. And you see I'm flicking from the bottom, and I actually added a couple smaller brush strokes on the bottom too, to kind of darken up the entire bottom, so it's pretty solid there. And then on the other side, they can point any direction that you want them to point. Alright, I have base in black as well. And now I'm looking at my tree trunk, and I feel like I should add a bit more black there. So I feel like I want to add a touch more. Again, you don't have to. I just feel like mine's missing some, so I'm going to go back to my medium small brush. I'll take a little bit more black. I'll just add it right here on this couple brush stroke on the right-ish side. So you see I'm not going to the edge. You can go to the edge if you want to, but I just want to add a bit more darkness because it almost looks gray there. So I just want to add a bit more straight black. And again, it's not something you guys have to do. If yours already looks great and perfect, you don't have to. I just feel like mine's too gray. It doesn't have contrast. It doesn't have enough contrast for me, so I just wanted to add a little bit more. Because you never know when you just add it, right? You only see those things once it starts drying, and that's when you know whether it is the right color or not. A little bit of shadow underneath the paw. Just bring it out. A bit of black here too. Again, just for the contrast, really. Yeah, that's great. I like this. All right. So that's our layers in black. Then later we're going to move to our brown. We're going to move to white highlight. Actually, a few different shades of brown that we're going to use there. And we're also going to use a little bit more teal. So hopefully you have that. Actually, teal we can even use now while we still have that, because mine is drying fast. I don't want to mix another one. So I might as well use it now. So I'm going to take whatever I have left here, which is not a lot. Maybe I'll water it down a little bit so it's a little more liquid. Yeah, you see guys, I only have like a tiny smidge left. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to add it a bit on the tree trunk, on a lighter side though. So you're going to flick it from the right to the left, just a little bit, to give it that little hint of teal. We don't need much of it. We just need a brush stroke here and there. Just again, to give it that little smidge of something. All right, I added our teal. That's good. Okay guys, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna add this segment of the video and I'm gonna let this dry up. It doesn't have to necessarily be fully dry for our next step, but also it's been 50 minutes of painting, so it's good, and that's if you kept up with my pace. If you took a couple of breaks, it's been much longer for you. So it's a good time to take a little break again before we move to a final section and do all the brown colors and everything else that needs to be done. So take a break whenever you're ready, come back and we'll finish strong with the last segment, and I'll see you guys there.